My little PogChamp.
Am I your little PogChamp?
Should we RP going on a date?
No.
Because it's Valentine's Day?
No, please. I'm kind of nervous for his first date. Oh, look.
One of each of us plays like one person, like the waiter at the restaurant. No, this is
all right.
No,
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna be
Dibs
the waiter.
Waiter.
I'm the waiter. I'm the waiter.
I already called dibs.
I
called dibs.
Nobody wants to go out with me.
How about we start the episode, Brandon, with your most embarrassing date story?
Do I have one?
I don't know. Do you?
Let me
tell us a funny romance story, Brandon.
A funny romance story.
To
okay, I got one.
All right.
So I'm seeing this chick in high school, right?
So I'm seeing this broad in high school.
And she and I worked at the same place, and my friends and I were like, "Hey, we like baseball. She likes baseball. Let's take her to a baseball game, like double date, triple date." Well, one of them couldn't get the triple date, so that's too bad. But it was a double date with the third guy fifth wheeling, which is awesome. And we go to the game, and it's like the fifth. No, not even the fifth inning. Probably like the seventh inning, and the outfielders in the stands throw the ball to each other in order to like warm up and stuff. And at the end of every inning, they throw the ball into the crowd as like sort of a souvenir after they're done practicing. And they throw it like right at me, and I jump to get it and I miss it. And I was gonna give it to her, but it didn't work out. But then anyway, I came back from the game and I was like so embarrassed because of that. And we're sitting on top of my car roof, and my guy friends are watching me because we're in the back of the parking lot and they're watching me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't have this. So I drove all the way to the front of the parking lot from wherever they were. And I kissed her, right? And then my guy friends come up and they're like, "And how was it?"
Yeah.
What?
And then they drove away. And it was good.
All right. And there's
that's Brandon's idea of a funny romance.
What do you want from me? Okay?
I don't know. I guess I didn't really know what to expect, I asked you for a funny date story, and so
there was that time
you missed a ball, you kissed a girl, and then you drove in a parking lot.
Hey, I got another one. I could do this.
Okay,
again.
fine. Do another one.
So this is where I'm at a mall with my first girlfriend, and this is like one of our first dates ever. But neither of us can drive yet, and we were walking around, and at first it was kind of awkward because we were kind of getting used to each other as like boyfriend and girlfriend, and she's like, "Oh, my dad's here. I gotta go," and I'm like, "No, wait, and I walk with her to the food court where her dad is, and I ask her, and this was my first kiss and her first kiss, and I asked her to kiss me, and she's short, and she stood up on her tippy toes, and it was great. And then we round the corner, and her dad is right there, and her dad's a Marine, and I got so scared. I was like, "Goodbye, nice to meet you."
Goodbye. You disappeared into the night.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Goodbye.
All right. Well,
was that better?
Yeah, you getting tied into a knot by a Marine, I could see that happening.
Brandon's like a pretzel on the floor.
I'm like what Patrick looked like in that episode where they played the instrument, and he got the trombone shoved up.
Yes.
That's what I look.
The white sedan. All right. Well, there's a nice story to kick off. This episode is stacked. The Friday's the 13th. Friday the 13th? No, it's the 12th. Anyways, this is the Friday before Valentine's Day. So we here at Stacked, we've come together to celebrate love in cinema. And today, my boys, me, Chris, Brandon, there they are. You can't see them, but just imagine them there. Imagine them like sitting right in front of you as you're listening to this, and they're waving at you right now. You're going, "Hi." Say hi, boys.
Hi.
Oh, hello.
They're there, and we're here to talk about the most romantic movies that we've watched and ever experienced. Guys, how was putting together this list? Was it hard or was it easy? For me, it was kind of easy because, you know me, I have a heart of stone. So the ones, when it really stands out, it really stands out. So
I mean, for me, I love romance movies. You know, I'm a big romance guy. I'm a softie, as they'd say.
As they'd say in the
I'm a
Greasy
softie,
Strangler,
yeah.
I'm a real softie. Brandon's a real
like,
smoothie.
and I was just going through all of my Letterboxd movies, and there were like probably 20 or 30 that I really liked. But if like I wanted to make sure I like broadened it out, you know, it wasn't just like one or a few from a couple eras, because of course I've seen a lot of 2010s films that are romances. Not all of them are good,
Right.
but I feel like the more you watch of a certain era, the more likely there are to be good ones, because you watch, it's just probability. So I tried to diversify it a little bit and go with ones that I really love or that I think are sort of unique.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay, Chris, what about you? I know you're telling us before the show that these picks of yours, they might be a little familiar.
Yeah. So, kind of like Brandon, I'm a big softie too. Like I
Yes.
love love. I think it's
Yes.
such a wonderful thing. So a lot of the movies that I really like have something to do on some level with love. Um, and yeah, so like I had a huge selection to pick from, so it was kind of hard for me to distill it down, and give it like, a personality that I really liked.
Mhm.
Kind of funnily enough, the three picks that I ended up going with are actually revivals of old picks that were never chosen for Final Stack before.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what you guys bring to the table, especially you, Ethan. Because like I've talked to Brandon about like relationships and shit a lot before, but you and I we never really talked about this kind of stuff before. So I want to see your
Yes.
take on the whole thing. But yeah,
I'm quite an enigma when it comes to this kind of stuff. So, well, I can't wait to hear your reactions on what I believe are some of the most romantic films I've seen.
There
So.
better not be a
right.
goddamn Godzilla movie on this list. I swear.
Could I
Godzilla
do
versus Mothra. They are a
Godzilla?
couple.
Oh, the chemistry is so intense in that one. No Godzilla movies.
Wait, is
Don't
there
worry,
any
guys.
familial romances on this list?
Familial romance?
familiar. Jesus.
My first pick is Cannibal Taboo.
I think
From Up on Poppy Hill, you know.
I think it's an important distinction to make between like love, but specifically what we're looking at, I feel like we're looking at romance love.
Oh yeah.
Not necessarily platonic love, which is just as valid as a romantic like love, but we're specifically looking at romance because it is a season of romance that is Valentine's Day.
Hate Valentine's.
That's right.
Even when I dated people, I hated this holiday.
I
But
hate
anyway,
Why
but
do you
this
hate
is what it
Valentine's
is.
Day?
This is what it is.
No, go into it. Share with the viewers.
Okay.
Get on your soapbox. Why do you hate Valentine's Day?
I just think it's a corporate ass holiday, and like they say, you should only like celebrate your love for your partner once in a year, other than your anniversary, and it's Valentine's Day. What's so special about Valentine's Day? It's a freaking day in February. There's not much happening then. Sorry for
Couldn't
everybody.
you say
with
the same for
February
Christmas?
birthdays. No.
Why?
Because you don't have to participate in the corporate spirit of Christmas. I feel like for Valentine's Day, you do. You gotta get the
No, you
chocolates.
don't.
You
I
gotta
have
go to
never
a
done it.
restaurant. You gotta get flowers. Come on, you can only do stuff at Christmas, but on Valentine's Day, you can do those things every day of the year.
Okay. I
Appreciate
guess
your
that sort of
partners.
makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Appreciate your partners year round. It's a good message. All right. Well, before we get into our picks, you know the drill. Let's run through the rules. Once a week, we set a topic or theme and go our separate ways to construct our own 3-film stack. Then after a week, we come back here on the podcast and share our own stacks one film at a time. Then at the end of the show, we'll mix and match our 9 films to make the ultimate decision what quintessential 3-film stack we are checking out of this hypothetical video store. All right, Chris, you're kicking off this episode today, so fill us in with your first restack, as we call it.
Right. Well, my first pick is a film that I chose way back when we first started this podcast together. I think it showed up in our fall movie selection.
Whoa.
It's a film from 2009, directed by Mark Webb.
Oh,
It's
yes.
500 Days of Summer.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
just to recap for you
Interesting.
guys who don't know what this movie's about, it's about a guy named Tom and a girl named Summer, hence the name, and it is about him recollecting his memories of his 500-day long relationship with her, and it's told through this non-linear structure, and it's basically I think it to be one of the most contemporary depictions of modern romantic life. I find it to be extremely engaging in how its character designs kind of clash and go against one another, and you see how their different approaches and perspectives to romantic relationships kind of like make their relationship very like emotionally like how do I put it, like emotionally like erratic, I would say. For example, Tom is very much like your quintessential nice guy, really wants to like get the girl and, go on dates and like, really has that like idealized romantic perspective. But on the other hand, Summer is very much a realist and like has a very like, a much more like laid off approach when it comes to romantic relationships. So obviously these two things aren't exactly compatible, but I think that's kind of the idea with this film because it's a film that details how difficult it is to navigate modern relationships because nowadays especially people are kind of I think coming into themselves a lot more and like they're a lot more like aware of who they are individually and therefore like they might not necessarily be looking for a long-term relationship during some form of a romantic exchange with someone. And I think it's a very like heart-wrenching movie, especially for I think people like us who are growing up in like this very modern digitized world. Brandon, you and I have talked about this movie a ton before. What do you think of it?
I like the movie. I just don't know if I like it for this list. Because I think the relationship here, while definitely realistic and good at capturing, I think the modern kind of vindictive feel that certain relationships have, I think it is a little more on the pessimistic side than it is on the optimistic side.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like the movie. I think Zooey Deschanel's and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's chemistry throughout the film is really good. I think the comedy is really good when it's there. I think there is like a good visualization of what what love in a relationship looks like when there is that there. It's like sort of like the magic of the honeymoon phase is perfectly captured by the film.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's not a film that I expressly go back to watch because of their relationship, because of how it goes, per se.
Right. No, yeah, I totally see like how like the film isn't. It's a surprisingly like bleak outlook on like how emotionally distressing I think a lot of modern relationships can be. So
Absolutely.
I guess I think like as we kind of close out the stack at the end, we'll like decide like if we're trying to like make this a very like flowery and like beautiful and euphoric kind of list, or are we trying to like kind of like gauge into that, but also talk a bit more about like larger notions on what modern dating is and whatnot. I don't know.
If that's
yeah.
the case,
True.
I should choose like Gone Girl.
Yeah, well, surprise, surprise. I still haven't seen this film, even though I said I was planning on to after you pitched it for fall movies. But such as My Way on Stacked here, I always promise I'm gonna watch films and never do it. But hey, now that it's been restacked, now I got it. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, great pick.
Yeah, that's my first pick.
Awesome. All right, so my first pick is a French film. You gotta love the French and how they celebrate.
It's the language of love.
L'amour, oui, c'est la langue de l'amour. Oui?
C'est la vie.
C'est la vie. Bonjour.
Bienvenido. Wait, no, that's Spanish.
Mon premier
Bienvenue.
film que je présente en le podcast Stacked est un film de Jean-Pierre Jeunet. C'est le film Amélie.
Oh, Amelie.
Yes, it's Amélie.
Well done, Ethan.
Thank you. I haven't taken French in, it's been 2 years and I still was able to crack that out. All right. Amélie. Love this film. It's such an amazing film, especially for the introverted, you know? I said in my review, this was like a call to action to introverts, you know? Because you never really see this dynamic before. It's like two shy people, and the director Jean-Pierre Jeunet really goes into like their psyche through like editing and sound design, where these little steps that these two take into like courting each other are like, they're like cosmic, you know? We see what they see and we feel how they feel and how crazy it is for them, you know? I love how bombastic this film is. It's incredibly warm. It's a beautiful looking film. I love the coloring.
It's not an incel movie.
It's not an incel movie because it's telling you to like be brave, you know, when it comes to romance, and that's just something I really appreciate. And I don't really see, and when I do see it, I don't think it's tackled all that well because, like you said, Brandon, sometimes it can be incel-y. So this is not an incel movie, but it's just a delight. It's an absolute delight. What do you guys think about Amelie? Watch it together.
I know. But I had seen it in high school. I remember actually turning it on one morning, and then my parents came home from like grocery shopping, and it's that scene where everybody's having the orgasms across the world. You know?
Oh yeah.
And they were like, "What movie are you watching?" And I'm like, "A French film." And they're like, "That explains it." But no, I genuinely have a great opinion of this movie. It was kind of what got me into foreign film as a kid, other than The Untouchables, which is also French.
Oh, love it.
And what I really like about Amelie is how magical it is. Like, it feels like, even though it's grounded in a sense of grimy reality, the way the film looks is like luminous. Like it has so much lighting to it that really pops off the screen. It's like the characters are always sort of glowing, but especially the protagonist Amelie, and you really get to see how she, like you mentioned, how she and the person she likes feel about each other through visual storytelling and very surrealist imagery. Such as her fading into a puddle. That's a famous sequence from the film. It's like her collapsing in on herself. But not only is it a film about their love, it's about societal love and how, you know, people have been affected by divorce and physical attachments, but also like people who randomly meet in real life. Like there's her friend at the shop she works at who falls in love with the patron who always goes there. And it's a very interesting dissection of like love as a concept.
Yeah, I remember when we watched this movie together, like I was really taken aback by like, obviously Ethan, like you mentioned how like I feel like the formalist elements of this film are like completely inseparable from its like more thematic, like, you know, bits and pieces. I think it's so like beautiful. It's such a beautifully done film. I think like it does a great job of kind of like externalizing romance into the world that it's creating. There's something so beautiful about these kind of like vibrant and like almost like hyper surrealist like colors.
Absolutely.
The reds and the greens that are
the
like
reds and the greens especially. Yeah.
Deeply saturated.
Like, and I think it has a really beautiful like timeless message about like love and, you know, like, and how it pervades over like human existence. I feel like in a weird way, I remember like reading something about how like on some level, everything humans do is in some way linked to a desire for love, whether that be romance or platonic or, you know, social or whatever. And yeah, I think this movie does a really great job of talking about how like, you know, there's like all like people are interconnected by this concept of love. And like it's just so like it's very enlightening. It's a very like euphoric movie. I feel like that. I think when you put on, you've kind of like you can't help but fall in love with existence in the world.
Yeah.
It's a very positive movie. I feel like, and I feel like a lot of films, especially nowadays, where I feel like our culture is a lot more cynical now. So I don't feel like you get a lot of films kind of like this anymore.
Oh yeah.
So it's nice to have a little something that might have a little bit more of a beautiful, like, screw it, it's a movie, let's have fun and make it wonderful kind of vibe
Yeah.
to it. And yeah, I think this is great.
There's such a unique energy to it. Like, it's almost like the director has captured something that is very special and different in comparison to a lot of different romance movies, especially of the time.
Yeah.
Like to the point where it's like you can definitely tell his or her, I forget, style as you go through his filmography. I think he also did a film called Delicatessen, which is very recognizable if you've seen screenshots of that versus Amelie. The other thing I wanted to mention is one of my favorite romances, which I did not choose, About Time. The main character,
Oh.
Tim, has a poster of it in his Amelie in his bedroom.
Ah.
And I think that's really telling based on the plot of the movie and the journey his character takes, considering it almost parallels Amelie's to a certain extent, as he is an introvert as well.
Did you know that Jean-Pierre Jeunet, he directed Alien Resurrection?
I did.
The director
That's
of
a very
Amelie directed an Alien movie.
and like one of the most insane ones.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. All right, Brandon, what's your first film?
This is one of my favorite modern romantic comedies. I saw this 3 times in theaters in 2012. And everybody, whenever they're like, wait, this is a romance movie? And I'm like, of course it is, you idiots. It's Silver Linings Playbook.
Oh, okay.
Have you guys seen this movie? Just checking.
No, I haven't.
No, I haven't.
I remember it came out 2012, right?
Yes, it was nominated for Best Picture, and you don't see many romances or romantic comedies that really place at such a high level as the Academy Awards. And yes, we're going to discuss on this podcast how, yeah, even though the Academy Awards are prestigious, they don't always have the best choices. But I feel like they made an excellent call here. This is a human drama about Bradley Cooper's character who's going through a mental episode when his wife cheats on him. And he is basically sent to this insane asylum, right? Or not an insane asylum, but like a rehab clinic because of what he does in response to that. And when he gets out, I think it's like a year later, you know, he is confronted with a world that is like very cold because of his bipolar disorder and how he doesn't really feel like anybody can match him. And then he meets Jennifer Lawrence's character. And this is kind of where I kind of like began loving Jennifer Lawrence as a actress. Now, I can't say she's been doing a lot of great films recently outside of like Mother, but like her in this movie, she completely deserves the Oscar. She's so charismatic. She and Bradley Cooper have such great chemistry. And it feels like a romance that actually could happen in the real world because it isn't all like fluffy flowers and whatever. There's some dark stuff here about mental illness and about people getting along who wouldn't normally get along in a normal world. But that's not like, it's not magical the way they get together, you know? Although you don't expect it, it totally works. And yeah, I really need to show you guys this movie. I thought you had seen it.
No, I'm surprised. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't go out to see it. I mean, I wasn't really into cinema back in 2012, you know? And then I remember like the hype around it was huge, you know? And just I guess about around the time that like I started getting into films and stuff like that, like no one really talked about it, but I know it's up there in your top 100. So what is it? Even like your top 20 films of all time or something like that.
It's endlessly rewatchable, dude. It's like very easy to like just pop in any day.
Okay, cool.
Chris?
Yeah. So yeah, I haven't seen this movie either. I think kind of in the same way with Ethan, in the sense of like it was 2012, and I think I really only started getting my hands into like the world of cinema in like 2014. So like, you know, it just kind of passed me by, and like the title is always like, I've always known the title. I know Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper are in it. I know it's a very accomplished film, and it's throughout award season and whatnot. But it just kind of evaded me for a while. And yeah, Brandon, I had no idea this was a romance film. I thought it was a movie about football.
Hey, it's got football elements to it, but it's not a football movie. It's not a sports movie. But also, Chris, I've got 2 words that are gonna help you watch this movie.
I'm Batman.
No,
What
no,
is
no. Chris Tucker.
Oh, really?
Chris
He's
Tucker,
in this movie?
Robert De Niro, Jackie Weaver, I think Russ Ortiz, or whatever his name is, Tito Ortiz, Russ Ortiz, one of those guys.
All right, so sorry everybody, little technical difficulties there. Brandon got really just like excited about
Chris
Silver
Tucker.
Linings Playbook, and Chris Tucker, and he just yeeted his microphone out the window, so we had to take a second for him to go get it. But we're back now, and we're gonna just go right on to Chris, your second pick of your romantic movie stack.
Cool.
So hit it.
Right. Well, I'm sure you guys must have seen this movie coming. I have spoken very highly of this film for years. It was Brandon has told me this was a gateway drug of a film for him to
Oh my
introduce him
God.
into the world of anime. It's a film directed by Makoto Shinkai in 2016. It's Your Name.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and Your Name is one of the most popular anime films to ever come out of Japan, especially now. I believe it is one of the highest grossing, if not the highest grossing anime film ever made.
Well,
And yeah, it follows the story of Mitsuha and Taki, who are quite literally star-crossed lovers. Mitsuha growing up in rural Japan and Taki in the heart of Tokyo. And it's a film where one day they wake up, but in each other's bodies. And at first they think it's a dream, but soon they realize they're actually taking control of the body of someone who actually does exist. Now, there's a lot of twists and turns, a lot of Japanese mythology woven into it. But what really lies at the heart of this film is this incredibly like expressionistic and lovable, romantic, and just all around like just you can just feel how much like this film understands about like what it is to feel a sense of longing and desire for someone.
yeah.
And yeah, it just woven in so beautifully. I think the animation in this film is some of the best animation I've ever seen, period. We always speak very highly about how anime food looks amazing and just looks amazing. But Brandon and I have always talked about how Makoto Shinkai's works always make it look doubly delicious. Yeah, and like, all I ever want to do is just like when I watch this movie, just like, just really just immerse myself in this world, and it's so beautiful and it's so full of just like love and just I don't know. I could go on forever about this movie, but what do you guys think?
Yeah.
It's cinema.
It's cinema. I was the one who watched this film the last out of us, was introduced to it the last, and it's such a cool film about like I guess just like noticing the little stuff in life, like through this sort of this body swap like plot line, like characters have to sort of like notice things that they didn't really notice before in their lives, because they're like, it's kind of like what we talked about in Soul, but this works because it's two people of the same race and sort of not experiencing like meaning of life, but like of love, but they're sort of like going into other people's shoes, and it's just like it's beautiful because they sort of not only like get an appreciation for each other but for life overall, and it's a beautiful looking film. It's one of the most beautifully animated films I've seen. The score is great. We talked about it in the film scores episode.
Yes.
And it's got a killer twist, let me just say. Like, I don't want to spoil like what the reveal is in this movie, because like I don't know if you really see it coming the first time you see it. And it's just like it's insane. It's insane. Brandon, what do you think about Your Name?
It's got a big twist, like Sally Gardner at the gal has a
Shut up.
Just kidding. I think this movie is really good. I think it's a story more about friendship to begin with, honestly. Like people how they've come to become accustomed to another way of living, and thus find a friend because of it, even though like they really don't know that person. So it is a very unique animated romance unique romance entirely, because you don't really see this played upon in the body swap genre ever. So I really like it. It's a bit tragic, but I mean it's a good choice. It's a good choice.
Yeah. I've always like joked like this is the biggest simp movie ever made.
Oh, it's pretty simpy.
And can we should we talk spoilers or should we just not?
I
What do
think
you
we
think?
should leave it.
Okay.
Because
I
like
guess
Ethan, I feel like if like they're gonna get the full weight of the movie, it'll hit them when they watch it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess one thing I'll add without spoiling it is like the movie is like I think it's a very ethereal movie. It's one that I think makes
Oh,
you
yeah.
just like you feel very connected to, you know, emotions just in general throughout this movie. And like I think one thing that it does beautifully that I haven't seen very many films do before is like talking about how like about this idea of memory and how like as time and space moves on, like memories become passerbys and then eventually kind of fade from existence for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I don't know. I think it has a beautiful message on that, and I could not recommend this movie enough, to be honest. I think it's so inventive and so beautiful, like throughout all of the entire runtime.
Yeah, I think it is good. Like, if you want to get into sort of anime outside of Ghibli, you know,
Mhm.
I think there is a few, as Aiden puts it in his review on Letterboxd. I just looked anime isms that like,
Mhm.
in terms of like its melodrama, you know. But
Right.
I think, you know, that's par for the course, and there's more to it in this film. So I definitely recommend it. Hey, speaking of anime,
Oh boy.
and speaking of films we've already talked about before, and speaking of films we've already talked before on the films and scores episode, the film scores episode.
Oh,
My
really?
next pick, yeah, what a weird coincidence, is directed by Tomomi Mochizuki, and it's 1993's Ocean Waves. Now, the first time I talked about this movie,
Interesting.
yeah, you'd think it very interesting. So, the first time when you watch this movie, you're like, this isn't really romantic, you know? Like, what's going on here? And then you realize, I don't know, it's not really a spoiler, it's just like, you watch this film and the relationship between these two characters, and you don't really see it as romantic. And then at the end of the film, it's sort of like they realize that they loved each other for all this time, you know? So when I watched it the first time, I was like, you know, this movie's fine, you know? But upon rewatch, knowing that like these characters, the whole like that they loved each other throughout this whole film, it just like it made it really all the more special for me. Like, I don't know, it just showed a really real relationship where these two characters, like, they'd be angry at each other, they'd be annoyed, they don't understand what like other characters are doing, like why they'd be doing things, and that's just like that just felt really real to me, you know. But it's
Mhm.
also like with the beautiful soundtrack that I talked about, and it's the art style, it's a beautiful looking film. It just like, I don't know, it just creates like, I think nostalgia is a big part of this film because it's about like memory and looking to the past, and the nostalgia of high school and realizing something uh, that you had that you've sort of lost, you know.
Uh-huh.
And it's I don't know. When I saw this again, I think I watched this. I watched this again on the day of the Capitol insurrection, you know, during the riots, and I got drunk and I was like, what the fuck is going on in our country right now? And I just like, I'm just gonna watch some anime, man. Who cares? And I put this on, and I was weeping by the end of the film. I'm not gonna lie. It's
Pog?
I don't think a movie has ever like got like, I don't think I've ever raised a score higher on a film than watching Ocean Waves. You know, I loved its score, but then like I gained a whole new appreciation for the narrative. So yeah, Ocean Waves. Brandon, I know we talked about the score, but what do you think about the film overall?
Unlike my friend Ethan here, I've always liked the narrative for this movie. It's not. It wasn't the. It wasn't the score that carried it for me. I think a lot of people may look at mid '90s Ghibli work like Ocean Waves and Only Yesterday, and maybe even Pompoko, and think these are slower, boring, very humanistic dramas.
Mm-hmm.
and they may not be able to like find that connection that like they would normally with like a Miyazaki, which has like magicalness to it, and but this is like realistic and grounded, and it is, other than The Wind Rises and From Up on Poppy Hill, the most grounded Ghibli movie, I
Yeah.
think. And that's because of like when it's set and what it's evoking. Like this sense of the romantic sense here is realistic as hell. Like you feel the characters and their journey
Mm-hmm.
um to kind of, I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going
Right.
to say more about that. I almost
Yeah.
did. But like the ending of this movie, the last like 10-15 minutes are really good. Because
Yeah.
they capture something that I think a lot of people our age are probably feeling about the past as well as the future. I think
Yeah.
that's a good way
It's
of
a
putting it.
it's a very good film for us right now in our moment, and like as we're coming up on graduating college, we're
Mhm.
looking back on sort of our whole young adult life, and this, like, I don't know, this story just really cemented well with me right now. I know Chris, you haven't seen it, but like I gotta recommend it. I know you're gonna go through Ghibli movies soon now that you got that HBO Max.
Yeah.
Definitely recommend this one. It's super underrated.
Yeah. I mean, like, based on what you said, Ethan, like, you were talking about how, like, this film has such a sense of longing and
Mm-hmm.
melancholy and nostalgia. And I think, like, funnily enough, that's also like like one of the key emotions, or some of the key emotions that are explored in Your Name as well. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's almost like a very modern thing, almost. Or like maybe even timeless, in a sense of like, I feel like people, like, especially artists, I feel like are very obsessed with this idea of nostalgia and melancholy. I think this art form is very much concerned with time and how, like, you know things kind of pass you by, and the idea of revisiting history or pressing forward into the future. Like, I don't know, but that's all very,
Yeah.
like, what the way you described this film to me sounded very romantic. Like, it had that kind of um like beautiful euphoric love to it, but it also had that kind of pessimistic nostalgia, I guess, in a weird way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like, this sounds, I don't know, would you say like this is the most Your Namey a Ghibli film gets?
No.
What would that
Uh
be
No?
then?
What would you
no,
say?
because like I feel like Your Name is like a totally different like tone and like sense of like I feel like in terms of like romance, they're similar because of the ages of the protagonists, but I feel like the journey to get there is just so different in comparison. Like there's a sense of realism to this, and I feel like with Your Name, it's not really grounded in any form of realism.
Right.
So I
Well,
don't
are
I
you
don't know
saying
if
like
they're
the
very
most
comparable
Your
films.
Name?
The emotional parts? I don't think
I think
so.
that I think
I
the
don't
in
think
terms of
so.
the relationship dynamics, maybe.
I
I don't
think
know.
it's much more subtle. I think Your Name is a lot like like Aiden said. There's a lot of animeisms like in the emotions of
Yeah.
the characters, whereas like the characters in Ocean Waves are like expressive, but not in a way that is melodramatic.
Mm.
Doesn't mean it's a bad
Okay.
Okay.
thing. It just means it's a
No.
different
Yeah.
tone.
No, I get that. Yeah, yeah.
Totally.
It's like the
Totally.
difference between like outward expression versus like sublime, like subtext, I guess, is kind of the idea.
Well, there's
Um
some subtext, but then there's also like they just don't
well, yeah, there's
overact.
interweaving between them. I mean, like, Your Name has beautiful sequences of silent, like, introspection. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure this movie also has some moments of absolute, like, just romanticism. But okay, that's really interesting to to
Yeah.
think.
All right. Well, Brandon, let's go into your second pick.
Is it already me?
It's already you, buddy. What do you got?
Well, then I've got my 1955 pick.
All
The Best
right.
Picture winner from that year, Marty.
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 Is it, wait, Martin?
No, no, no. Milton.
Marty.
Millhouse. Marty.
Millhouse?
So this
Marty?
movie. So this movie won Best Picture in 1955, and this is a movie that would not normally win Best Picture. I believe it's one of the only romances that has ever won Best Picture. It basically just follows a normal guy who is living with his mom, in the 1950s, and he's like in his 30s or 40s or something like that. And he basically has had a hard time finding somebody to marry because he feels like he has a lot of expectations on him from his mother and from his mother's friends and from his own friends about who he dates. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
this movie tapped into something in me that I was not expecting when I first watched it, because like I feel like I did the same thing with my relationships and my sense of choosing a partner. Like I always would run it by somebody, and if they didn't like somebody, I sometimes felt like obligated to not have that person like, or go out with that person, or have that person match with me on a dating app, right? Because I just felt like, well, if this doesn't make somebody I love happy, like for familiarly, then maybe I should
Mm-hmm.
match with them, right? But this film kind of tackles that idea and how this guy sort of comes to terms with it when he meets this girl who everybody in his life thinks is not very pretty. She's very plain looking. She's not like a Marilyn Monroe type. But in fact, she's just a smart, kind, funny individual who gets along with this guy who wouldn't necessarily be considered an attractive person for his time, right? He's not a Cary Grant. He's not a Jimmy Stewart.
Right.
And I loved this relationship and how they connected. It's a short, like 80 to 90-minute movie where it has them going on a date, and he kind of overcomes this flaw he has, and it's really understated and strong, and I highly recommend it to anybody who hasn't seen it yet.
Oh man,
Great.
I've seen posters and I know this is like uh critically acclaimed, but I've never really known what the film is about. That's super interesting to like to that this kind of movie was made in the 1950s, where like sort of uh romance in the movie star was so like glorified. To have sort of a romance movie about just like they just look like two normal people.
They are, and
Yeah.
that's like the best thing about it, right? It's like so often I think in movies we're conditioned for the magical,
Yeah.
and some I love magical romantic comedies sometimes, but this one is just really grounded, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just surprising that the Academy jumped for it when they did, because it doesn't, in comparison to a lot of the films that were being awarded at that time, like this does not fit with their MO. Let's just
Right.
say. But
Wow.
Chris, what
Chris?
do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen this movie either. Like, I think this era of Hollywood, especially, is like kind of it's become kind of a relic to like I think modern audiences. Like, there's very much like a tone I feel like that you get with these kinds of movies, especially way back then. And I don't know, like based on what you were describing, Brandon, it sounded to me like a very like I don't know how to put it better than like. Do you guys remember when we watched Singing in the Rain like way back when
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
film aesthetics, and you could feel how that era of filmmaking and whatever that like how that imparted itself onto the audience and how like much fun everyone was having with it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like this movie had a similar effect, but at least in my impression of based on my impression of what you said, and it has this kind of like I don't know how to describe it, but it has that kind of like twist to it that is like pertaining to like what when did you say this was made in the 50s?
55.
55.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something kind of like romantic about that era in kind of like I don't know, there's something about that era that I think rings very romantic with me. Like the Roaring Twenties known for being wild and fun. And then like, every era kind of has its own thing, but like the 50s on some level, like at least like this kind of like classical kind of looking thing um reminds me very much of a romance. So yeah, that sounds interesting to me.
If you think of it, like there aren't many film. I think the 50s is the time when cinema was starting to transform into something new. I think in the
Mm-hmm.
40s and 30s, the production code kind of shaped what was coming out, and they weren't
Yeah.
really taking a lot of risk in terms of like certain films. But in the 50s and 60s, you started to see more edgy features that didn't really depict the suburban nature of the times.
Right.
Like, Marty, for example, it doesn't feel like a movie that should be made in the 1950s, because everybody considers it to be this era after the war where I think it's the era of Good Feeling, where everybody settles down and is like, even though the Korean War happened, like it was like a peacetime,
Right.
where like people just got along and had a bunch of kids. There was the baby boom as a result of it, right? So it just feels absurdly quiet, and I think you do get that sense of magic from the film because of how classical it is. Like, I wouldn't say necessarily it's not a color film. It's a black and white feature, but I do think it carries a similar sense of like, it's very hard to say, Chris. You're right. It's a romantic nostalgic feeling for that time when everything was quote unquote peacetime and easy and everybody can focus on their family and this middle class nature. And I think this movie just came at the right time in the right place to capture that feeling in a realistic manner.
All right. Yeah, a nice golden era romance film for our podcast there. All right. Let's get into our final round here. Chris, you want to kick us off with your last pick?
Well, I actually decided to change mine in the middle, one of my final one at the end of this episode, because I realized that. So yeah, this one is, I believe this is a completely fresh pick. Actually,
You don't.
It's a 2004 film directed by Michel Gondry.
Oh.
It's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Dude, double stack.
Oh, no way, double stack.
Yeah,
do
double
this-
stack.
Did
No,
you
I swear
purposefully
we
do
didn't
No!
plan this one. This one was not
Did you
planned.
do this to get at me for picking such great romance films?
What?
You're done, Brandon.
Yeah, we've been secretly texting you. I'm like, Chris, whatever you do, just pick Eternal Sunshine.
We
It
need
doesn't
to
matter
stop.
anymore.
Um,
No, I love that you picked this film. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, so this movie is, I think, Michel Gondry's like masterpiece. I think a lot of people would agree with that. Brandon is a big fan of Be Kind Rewind, and I'm a big fan of the Green Hornet, but that's a different topic.
Damn.
But okay, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's a beautiful like movie about memory, melancholia, and it's just, I think it kind of tackles this idea of like the perseverance of love over everything at the end of the day. And it's romantic, but it also has this like really surrealist like switch on it. Michel Gondry's known for kind of his dreamlike aesthetics, and very much of director concerned with the sensation that cinema gives you. And I think this is a great example of how he's able to like articulate certain things and able to manifest emotions in this audience through nothing more than like just showing a guy like trying to recollect memories of his relationship. And I don't know, I just think it's so beautiful. And I don't know, Ethan, what do you have to say about this movie?
Yeah, so going into this episode, I knew I was going to pick a Michel Gondry film because I don't know, I love how he depicts romance. So I was going back and forth between this one and The Science of Sleep. And even though I think like The Science of Sleep, I fall for the romance a bit more in that one, even though it's like a little one-sided,
Mm-hmm.
But I just like, I don't know, I like the complexity of that relationship in that film, but I love what Michel Gondry like sort of tackles in this film in terms of like philosophy and like free will, where you have these characters who erase each other from their memories, and throughout the film they slowly, like without knowing it, rebuild this relationship that they already had, so it sort of asks questions about like are certain things in our lives already predetermined, like are these two like meant to be together? And it's an interesting discussion, and like he's a very he loves to deal with the subconscious, Michel Gondry, so
very introspective movie.
Yeah, so we have like this weird journey of going through Jim Carrey's mind, and his memories while he's trying to save, Clementine from being erased again, and it's super melancholic film. It's pretty, I feel like it's very iconic visually, like you get that shot of the beach during winter and stuff like that, like, and of Jim Carrey underneath the table as a little boy, which is
Yeah.
really funny.
There's
It's
a
like
scene-
it's got a lot of great humor too, you know, like
Yeah.
it's surprisingly funny for how sad it is.
There's a scene in this movie where they're like laying down on the floor and stargazing,
Mhm.
and that scene like melts me every time. Like it
Yeah.
just this movie turns me into a bit of a mess because like it really is just like it kind of strips away the physicality of relationships and kind of turns it into something a bit more like emotionally like introspective. And like I think it's a movie that I think like makes you want to like, you know, laugh and cry and dance and just like in the fullest capacity, like just, you know, just to live as, shall I say, if I were to quote the witch, as deliciously as possible.
That's
Um,
such a weird choice of words.
How
How
Um,
different these two films are.
Would thou like to live fergaliciously?
Ooh, fergalicious.
Now that's better.
Now this movie is certifiably fergalicious.
Can we replace the Rotten Tomatoes meter with the Fergalicious meter, and it's just Fergalicious and not Fergalicious?
Yeah.
Brandon, what do you think of this movie?
This kind of makes up the trio of very surreal filmmakers we have in Hollywood this century, or this century, early century, 21st century. Charlie Kaufman, Spike Jonze, and Michel Gondry.
Yeah.
Each of which very much handles existentialism, and they've worked with each other on various films, right? So Charlie
Yeah.
Kaufman wrote this movie, I think I'm correct in that
I think so,
assumption, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And you really get his very depressing style in it, very
Mhm.
much so. But it's upheld. The film is upheld by the optimisticness and the magical nature of Michel Gondry, right? So
Right.
whereas like Anomalisa for Charlie Kaufman is kind of a devastating romance because he
Mhm.
directed and wrote that film. This is a very hopeful one, even though what is happening in the film is quite sad, really.
Yeah.
As like they both have erased memories of, you know, events.
Mhm.
And their characters have great chemistry. I think that's a thing that is definitely necessary in a good romantic film. But it also has to have like a realistic sort of ending that you feel works for both characters. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be they get together in the rain and kiss like in The Notebook, or I know that's not the ending of the film, but I'm just referencing it. Or it doesn't have to be totally dire and depressing like something like Anomalisa's ending, which I won't spoil if you guys have not seen that film. But I really enjoyed this movie. It's a really good romance, so I'm glad you picked it.
Hell yeah. All right.
We haven't had a
well,
double stack
That was
in
a
a
double
while.
stack.
We were on a dry streak on double stacks for a bit.
No, I had one
Yeah.
last week.
Who'd you have it with?
Oh, yeah, you had one with
right,
Michael.
You did have
Yeah,
one
that's
with
right.
Michael. That's right.
That was such an epically long episode. I forgot. Epic movies. Check it out, everyone. All right,
Yeah.
Brandon, let's
Brandon?
wrap this up with your last pick. Hit
Well,
it.
I split the difference between a modern romantic comedy and older romantic drama, and I chose something not in the exact middle, but from the 1990s, 1999's 10 Things I Hate About You, starring
Oh.
Heath Ledger and Julia
Oh,
Stiles.
fuck. Yeah. Okay, great. I love this movie.
Yeah. So this is based on a Shakespeare play called The Taming of a Shrew, which I have not read. I think that's right. Chris can you double check that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep talking. I'll
Yeah,
let you know.
All right. But this movie is basically following a high school student who falls for a guy who really isn't a lot like her. And the reason why this movie works is because of how it depicts high school and how it depicts romantic relationships.
Yeah, it is.
I'm correct. Okay, good. I have not read it yet, but I want to. And it's very interesting to see these characters kind of interact with one another in this world, because in some cases it is kind of magical, their adventures of falling in love and going on dates and such, because it's so unexpected. The whole point of her trying to be in this relationship in the first place is just to, I guess she wants to be happy, but other people want her to basically suffer because of how much of a biatch she is. And they basically say this guy played by Heath Ledger, he can he can date you, you know, but she doesn't know that it's like this whole thing. So basically, she's really falling in love with him while he is tasked to fall in love with her. And in a sense, that is so sad. But what you really start to see is, like, they really begin to care for each other over time genuinely. And even though that is a betrayal to the way, you know, most romantic comedies are, in which they magically meet one night and then fall in love forever, this allows the film to kind of have the ups and downs of what a real relationship is like, even if it is one formed out of bullying and teasing. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's a film that straddles the line between like emotional abuse and, like, you know, kind of like that kind of, like, how do I put it, like, for lack of a better word, high school bullshit that I think a lot of people are immersed in, especially in like public schools. And yeah, I mean, like, I remember I watched this movie with Joey just like on a whim one night, like a couple months ago, and like I remember just being very much immersed in it. I really just kind of like, it had this kind of energy that I think in like the 90s like was so like vibrant and powerful. It kind of just had this sense of pace and, you know, excitement to it, and like I really love like what the cast does. I mean, like, Julia Stiles, and is this Joseph Gordon-Levitt's first film?
It's one of his first films.
Okay.
He's great.
He's so tiny in this movie. And then you know, as you guys know, I love Joker. I mean, I love Heath Ledger. God damn it.
I love Joker. Dude, Joker was so good in this movie. Here are 10 things I hate about you. Number 10.
But yeah, I mean, like, Heath Ledger is one of my favorite actors ever, and I think he delivers a beautiful performance here. And no, I think it's just a lot of fun, honestly. I mean, there's that scene where he's trying to like get the girl, and he's like singing to her as he's running down like the stairs by the football field, and I don't know, I just found it so like, I don't know, there's something rebelliously romantic about this movie, I suppose. I don't know how else to put it better than that, but
it's pretty punk rock, Chris.
Yeah, it's kind of out there. But, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll is the MO of this movie. Yeah, Ethan, what do you think? Have you seen this movie?
Yeah, I've seen this movie many times. I gotta agree, like, very punk rock and roll. I mean, like, the title Hate is in it, so like, you know, hating things is a very punk rock thing. I love how cerebral of a movie this is, you know, when you think about the dynamic between Julia Stiles and Heath Ledger here. I think my favorite scene in the film is like when they're at the park and they're arguing, you know. It's just like a very emotional. Okay, I haven't seen this film. It was a Joker's trick. I have not seen this movie. Yeah, so I haven't seen this movie. But it sounds interesting.
There was no scene where they were talking in the park, and that's how I knew you were bullshitting.
I love Joker.
There is a scene where they're at a paintball field. So I wrote this down for a movie night, so we're good.
You wrote this down for a movie night? Well, I'm excited to check it out. I know. I think, did you guys watch this with like Joey and Tori? Or I don't remember.
I didn't. I saw it in.
I just watched it with Joey.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's how I remember it on my Letterboxd feed. Anyways, okay, great pick. All right, there is our list of romantic movies. Before we go down and hashing out this final stack, fellas, let's go through and list what our picks were. Remind the audience. All right, Chris, kick it off.
Yep, my films were 500 Days of Summer, Your Name, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Okay, Brandon?
I had Marty, 10 Things I Hate About You, and why did I forget it?
Silver Linings Playbook.
Thank you. Silver Linings Playbook. One of my favorite. Again, why is it? That's why. Don't do it out of order, people.
Yeah, come on. Keep it in the order. All right. Even though we did this whole in out of order. Anyways. And my films were Amelie, Ocean Waves, and like Chris, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. All right. So we know Eternal Sunshine is going to be on this list. I got a pitch here.
God.
So I think I am really interested in Marty. I think we need to have sort of a classic romantic film,
Mm-hmm.
from the classic Hollywood era, and that's the only one that we have really pitched here, So I'd love to see that one on the list. It's a unique to that era.
Okay.
And then since Chris and I have both chosen anime romance movies, I think Your Name should be on this list because I feel like that's the one the three of us have seen, and we all really enjoy that one, And I think it does have a really, like you said, they're literally star-crossed lovers in this movie, and it's just like it's a great experience.
And I honestly can't think of a list I would use this on more than romance, because to me this is my romance movie, like for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Hell yeah,
I don't know. Brandon, do you have an opposition to that, or?
I like Your Name as a movie more. I just don't think it fits as much into the romantic movie category as some films that we also have, but I will concede.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Eternal Sunshine, we sort of have the more modern, philosophical, love story here about like destiny, and it's sort of a bit subversive in the romance genre. You don't really see something so melancholic, So it's our more melancholic pick. This
actually, I'm going to pick a Woody Allen film. No, just kidding. Did he freeze?
I'm just gonna pick the movie of Woody Allen's life from the past 20 years. What a romance!
So romantic.
So romantic.
Not a good one.
All right, but do we like that order? I think starting with Marty and then going to Your Name and ending with Eternal Sunshine, or should we end with Your Name, because I don't know that the ending of that was kind of.
I think Your Name has. I think that's a great. I think Your Name has a great end off because it just, I don't know, it has like that kind of like. It's kind of uplifting, and I think that's a great tone to end off Valentine's Day on.
Yeah,
one could say.
What do you think, Brandon? One could say.
Yeah.
Got a pitch for the.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
Let's hit it off.
It's better to. Let's get it on. I've been really trying.
Let's get it on. All right. This is Stack's official 2021 February 13th. Mark the date. Mark the time. This came out at 10 a.m. on February 13th. Or no, February 12th. Excuse me. Whatever. This is our romance movies final stack. Starting with Brandon.
Marty. A film about expectations. A film about real, true love. I hope you all love Marty.
Marty! And our next film is Michel Gondry's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, a film that sort of breaks down the philosophy of love and what it is to like have a soulmate and be destined through this thought experiment of what if you were able to erase certain memories of people, and this complex couple and like the mistakes they make and how they get back together through this weird science fiction story.
And our final film is Makoto Shinkai's Your Name, a body switching movie about star-crossed lovers, and a movie that also is incredibly ethereal. And a movie, God, there's so much to say. It's a movie about passersby, memories fading, and is just an incredibly romantic and sensationalized film about time and space and the perseverance of love against all odds.
Boom. Couldn't have said it better myself. And there you have it, everyone. There is our final stack. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Stacked. I hope you're going to have a good Valentine's weekend. I'm going to be moving boxes my Valentine's weekend because I'm switching houses this weekend. So I hope you and also during these weird times, I hope you do have a creative way to celebrate your love with your partner if you have one, and if you don't, that's okay. Your time will come. And if you don't want one, then hey, that's okay too. Just like hang out, order yourself a pizza, listen to Stacked with us,
Yeah.
Go back to
do what we did. We watched Gone Girl together for Valentine's
Day
time.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. You could break up with your significant other after that movie.
Yeah, Brandon and I broke up after we watched that movie.
I told you not to say